we've had in this country for decades, and of course that is the coronavirus. This weekend we saw the country hitting new heights of new cases here. Deaths are rising again, and this is a president who doesn't want to talk about what we need to do to get it under control so we can get our economy open again. It's been the biggest fault line in this race since the crisis began in March. It continues to be. And one of the striking things about those big crowds, of course, is that there's no governor in this country who thinks that's a good idea, right? Those are events that have the potential to be super spreader events. And President Trump once again demonstrates that he is willing to put communities, first responders, the people who have to be on the front lines, at risk for his political gains. And that is something Vice President Biden's never been willing to do. So yes, there's a real difference in the kinds of events they're doing, because Joe Biden is showing people what a president would be doing at a time like this in the middle of a crisis.
Anita, according to Bloomberg News, some officials in the Biden team, largely people of color, have been urging campaign leadership to spend more in order to bolster minority turnout, but they felt their proposals were largely ignored. Are you worried that Biden is underperforming and will underperform with Black and Latino voters?
Jake, there's never been a Democratic presidential campaign, or I'm sure a Republican either, that has spent more on reaching out to communities of color. When we went on television, when this campaign went on television for the general election in the middle of the summer, we had a significant buy for African Americans and for Latinos as part of that initial buy, and we've never let up. And the reason why is because this campaign and Joe Biden don't see these communities as ones that you just go to at the end and try to just get out the vote. He believes in engagement. He wants to engage. He wants to build support with the communities as part of a broad coalition that he's built for this election. So I think the campaign feels like we've spent more money than any campaign ever has, and we're continuing to be out there working for every last vote.
As of Friday, more than 91 million Americans had already cast their ballots. Of those pre-election votes, 44% were from Democrats, 31% from Republicans. What kind of turnout do you expect to see from Biden supporters and Democrats on Election Day? Are you concerned that because disproportionately so many Democrats are voting early, you won't have a big turnout on Election Day for Biden?
Well, a vote is a vote, whether it's an early vote or an Election Day vote. I think it's been clear from the beginning of this general election that a lot of our supporters were going to vote by mail. We're going to early vote. We're going to vote safely and early. That's been our campaign message, is encouraging people to vote early. But that vote counts just as much as an Election Day vote. We would anticipate that President Trump would have a real outpouring on Election Day, because that's been his message to his voters, is to come out on Election Day. But there are also states where there isn't a strong culture of vote by mail or early vote, where we are going to see a lot of our supporters out on Election Day too. And our message is simple. If you've already voted, great. If you haven't voted and you're not sure exactly how to vote, go to iwillvote.com. It'll tell you how to get it done, but vote. And that is what you're seeing, Jake, in record numbers across this country. We've never seen an early vote like this. We're looking potentially at a turnout that will break all records. And it's because people want change. They do not want 4 more years of Donald Trump. They want a leader who's going to unite this country, who's going to get the coronavirus under control so that we can reopen this economy and we can build it back better.
There are obvious differences
Joe Biden.
There are obvious differences between the Democratic candidates and their campaigns in 2020 and 2016. But both candidates, both Biden and Hillary Clinton 4 years ago, held sizable leads and cash advantages over Trump. And obviously, that was not enough last time. What mistakes did the Clinton campaign make in 2016 that you've learned from and you're trying to make sure not to repeat?
There are two very different elections. In 2016, Donald Trump wasn't an incumbent who had failed miserably at the biggest test any president can have. How do you perform in a crisis? He was an outsider. He had no record. He was a much easier vote for people to cast than he is this time. So I'm not going to go back and second guess the Clinton campaign. What I can say is that this is a totally different situation. You have a president who, at the end of his 4 years, will become the first president in decades who has lost a net number of jobs in the 4 years he's been president. He has failed the biggest test any president can, which is how do you deal with a crisis? He has divided this country in a way that presidents simply haven't done in the past, pitted one group against another group, saying to Democratic states, Democratic governors, he's going to withhold aid if they criticize him. That's simply not what people want in a president. People are tired after 4 years of the chaos and the incompetence, and they're ready for a leader. They're ready for Joe Biden, who they know, and they know that he's going to be serious about governing, about fixing the problems, about getting coronavirus under control and bringing this country back together.
Anita, last question. We're 48 hours out from election night. What are you focusing on? What's the thing keeping you up at night in this final stretch?
The thing keeping me up is the same thing keeping people up on both sides, I'm sure, which is how do we get out the vote? How do we make sure that we get out every single vote we can between now and when the polls close? And then how do we make sure all the votes get counted and a winner gets called? So, at this point in the campaign, Jake, it's all up to those amazing people who are the field staff and who are out there making sure people can vote, and to our lawyers and our poll watchers to make sure there are no impediments. So same thing on both sides. We want to get our people out to vote.
Quick question for you. What are the odds that we actually know who the next president is on election night or early that morning?
Listen, I'm not an odds maker, but I think there's a reasonable chance that we're going to be able to know who the president is at some point, maybe early on November 4th, maybe midday on November 4th. But a lot of the early states that are battleground states, especially in the Sun Belt, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, are states that have, that tend to get their votes counted on election night. I think we'll get some sort of indicator what kind of night it's going to be from those three states. We'll see, obviously, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin may be slower. Pennsylvania almost certainly will be slower, but we'll be able to get a sense of what kind of night it's going to be. But I would say North Carolina closes at 7:30. It's the first of the big battlegrounds that closes. Georgia, Florida, they're all going to get their votes counted probably by the early hours of November 4th. And we'll have a sense by then how this is trending.
All right, Anita Dunn, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Jake.